All right. So picking up from where we left off, we're dealing with the law definition of commerce. So commerce, in its simplest signification, means an exchange of goods. The subject, the vehicle, the agent, and their various operations become the objects of commercial regulation. Court cases support that. Commerce is not traffic alone, but it is traffic. But it is intercourse between nations and parts of nations and all its branches. And that goes back to nationality. You know, you being able to deal with other nations of the globe, or back to state rather, you know, the law definition of state, where it's talking about a nation state could deal with other nation states. You can deal with other national communities now, because a nation state is just a community or a temple, consulate, embassy, jural society. All these things are the same thing. So now we can do commerce internationally. Once you declare your nationality, organize with your people, allow that to grow into something, right? Businesses, schools, etc. Now it's respected. Other nationalities of people see that. Oh, we can do business with them. It's respectable. Now we got international relationships. But it's levels to this, right? We let the Empress in here. So this is Islam Tazamaji, Tazamaji L, peace and love.
Islam, sister.
Islam.
So this is Henry Campbell's Black Law Dictionary definitions that we've been reading so far, FYI. So the constitutionally secure right to association, to include the United Nations Declaration on Human Rights, which further supports and defends the right to association. And whoever doesn't know what that means, the right to organize and form body politics, which is synonymous to a republic form of government. You have a right to that via Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution. So all this is in harmony to ancient practices that we have a right to do. Right to association is proof of how applying a license to any natural person is a violation and evidence of human trafficking, as licenses are certificates which grant permission to do something which, without the instrument, the people would not have the ability or permission to do so. By definition alone, when applied to natural humans, indicates the regulation of human life. A quote from Revelations 14:17, quote, and that no man might buy or sell, which is dealing with commerce, save he that had the mark of the beast, or the license will be in this case, dealing with the mark, or name the beast, or dealing with the straw man, or the number of his name, dealing with the Social Security. With the creation of licenses, such as the barber's license, it forces people to associate with certain institutions, as the idea and belief is that one needs a license to work as a barber and other professions, when in fact, that is not true. That is not true, as all licenses are for commercial regulations and do not apply to humans. Under color of law, we have been tricked to think it applies to us, when it only applies to corporations and commercial activities. So if you choose to deal in commerce, you have that right. It's not a big deal. But just know that you wearing your commercial hat. When you're wearing your human private capacity hat, everything's under national origin. Private property is protected under the Fourth Amendment. So, side note, keep in mind a man is worthy of his hire. If you provide a service, you have every right to be compensated, and that does not fall within the laws that govern taxes or commerce. Any questions? Statements, comments?
No questions, statements, comments over here.
Right, so we got the law definition of license, certificate, or the document itself, which gives permission. Case law to support that. Permission is actually the element of the definition to do something which without the license would not be allowable. Case law to support that. To license means to confer a right or power which does not exist without it. Case law to support that. All capitals name is used as an instrument to imply that the natural person they are forcing these commercial regulations on is artificial and is ens legis, or an artificial construct, being subject to commerce for the purpose of extortion. Case law, so Latin stare decisis and Latin res judicata, essentially stare decisis, something decided. Res judicata, res representing, a thing, or res in Latin just means a thing. Judicata, you can translate that to judicial. All right. So thing decided on, adjudicated. Adjudicated would be something decided. So case laws would be laws that you can use as law to support your case. You'll say, oh, this case law was already decided that you don't need this. It's a straight shortcut rather than flipping through a bunch of pages. Oh, it's already been decided. We don't got to waste time on this. We don't got to go to trial and all that. No state shall convert a liberty into a privilege. I'm sorry. Licenses are for the conduct of business, profession, occupation, the exercise of such. When they are a privilege, licensing is in the nature of a special privilege, entitling licensee to do something that he would not be entitled to do without a license. Case law to support that. No state shall convert a liberty into a privilege, license it, and attach a fee to it. Case law to support that. Murdoch versus Penn. If the state converts a liberty into a privilege, the citizen can engage in that right with impunity. Throughout the process of correcting your national identity, we will still face challenges. One way we can begin to correct some of the problems caused by the unjust imprisonment of our brothers and sisters branded Black, Negro, colored, etc., is to send legal notice to the person operating in a government capacity in the form of affidavit of facts, information, and habeas corpus. So when we're dealing with habeas corpus, which is a affidavit you'll send basically saying release the body because there was no injured party, there was no violation of, in our case, treaties. Nobody was murdered, nothing. So typically that'll be the position that we would put in our writ of habeas corpus. But more importantly, because we know these people are colonists, you're not going to just send the habeas corpus in and it be respected just because you sent it in. But if anybody in Chinatown sends something like that in, it gets respected. Koreatown, it gets respected. What I'm getting at is they're not going to take you seriously until we take ourselves seriously. And a lot of this is a divine space, A lot of our people wouldn't even get pulled over or harassed if we was working together, schools, businesses, etc. So hopefully that makes sense. So these are some of the challenges. And so we work together. Ideal world, we are, like how Noble Jew Ali time. Each temple probably have 5,000 members, each branch. When you're dealing with that, and like I say, it's temple dues. So you imagine with the treasury, the internal monies for business investments, able to hire our people to do X, Y, Z. Once you moving like that, you see it's a different jurisdiction. It's not even you don't even got to say that you don't got jurisdiction. You can just look like, okay, it's different over here. Leave them alone. They self-sustaining. They about business over here. Same thing like how we respect these Asians, because they about their culture pride and they about business. They know law. Their priorities is different. Now, once we at that point, now we send affidavits to the governor, mayor, chief of police, county sheriff, saying leave our citizens alone, or we're putting y'all on notice that it's a jurisdiction of our people over here. And based on the rights of indigenous people, we got the right to self-determination. Based on the treaty, if there's no treaty violation, it's no violation. Based on your manual, such as the Department of State Consular Notification and Access Manual, on how to deal with non-U.S. citizens, and some of those citizens you might have a treaty with via Article 6, Clause 2. Yeah, we those people, right? Now we'll hold some weight, because they can look around like, oh, y'all got businesses, schools, a bunch of y'all got security, y'all able to hire your own people. Oh, it's an ecosystem popping off over here. That's the divinity. You just see a sea of fezzes and turbans in a little area. Matter of fact, when you at that level, there's no need to send a notice. That's the notice, the activity. As I more think about this, there's no need for sending no notice to nobody. They could just look and see. You see what I'm getting at? That's the level. That's the levels to this. So an affidavit is a written document and must be rebutted word for word. For example, if you reference any case law as well as the Constitution, stating in order for a crime to exist, there has to be an injured party. And upon demand that an injured party must identify themselves, upon failure to do so or rebut by them, the state court, whomever, then no crime exists. Note, a state cannot be an injured party. Unless you have a contract with the state, then the contract must be produced for the record to see if any violation or abridgment occurred. Check the chat here. Right, they notice the activity. That's the notice. They're gonna notice the activity. Exactly. There's no need. You no need for sending no paperwork. They notice. You put them on notice because they notice you working together with your people. All right. So a state, of course, cannot talk. It's a piece of paper. You cannot injure a piece of paper. The DA cannot represent the people. Because it's a piece of paper. Once again, if the DA is saying he got injured, then he should be the one stating you injured him. Or somebody that got injured appointed him to represent them. Either case, where's the injured party? Law definition of affidavit: a written or printed declaration or statement of facts made voluntarily and confirmed by the oath or affirmation of the party making it, taken before an officer having authority to administer such an oath. Case law to support that. A statement or declaration reduced to writing and sworn to or affirmed before some officer who has authority to administer an oath or affirmation. Case law to support that. So just in, since we're dealing with contract law and things are written down, like, of course you got to create a trust, you got to create bylaws, you got to create organization for each temple. And, that's what we'll follow for our jurisdiction, right? That's the whole Self-Determination Act. But at the end of the day, it still has to be action. You can write something down. So just keep, want to have our head on the swivel of how to look at this in its entirety. A written or printed declaration or statement of facts made voluntarily and confirmed by the oath or affirmation of the party making it, taken before an officer having authority to administer such an oath. Any voluntarily ex parte statement reduced to writing and sworn to or formed before some person legally authorized to administer oath or affirmation, made without notice to adverse party and without opportunity, and made without opportunity to cross-examine. The word sometime includes dispositions. So dispositions, affidavit, same thing. Affidavits are of two kinds. Those which serve as evidence to advise the court in the decision of some preliminary issue or determination of some substantial right, and those which merely serve to invoke the judicial power. Case law to support that. So in a court sense, you'll put in an affidavit with law facts on why they need to do certain things, produce certain things, due process wasn't met. You'll put in an affidavit, a writ. Habeas corpus is a recourse remedy in law that a person can use to rightfully demand that a natural person be released from prison, as well as report the unlawful detention, imprisonment of a natural person. With enough people within imperium or power to command class action. So a class action, I'm not sure if who's familiar with that, but a class action is when it's a defendant and the plaintiff, or I can't think of the word right now, but it's multiple plaintiffs. Think of plaintiff. I'm looking for another word outside of plaintiff. But let's just use plaintiff for right now. If it's a body politic of people, then it's going to be 100 plaintiffs, 50 plaintiffs. Because when you're saying, remember, we're talking about habeas corpus in the context of a body politic, saying one of our citizens have been incarcerated unlawfully, and based on that, he or she needs to be released. That's the principle of habeas corpus, because we're dealing with the body corpus, right? It needs to. So that's just a little, summary on that. So that's a class action. So civil and criminal suits can be made against corrupt politicians, unconstitutional courts, unconstitutional police officers, etc., for operating under and through color of law, color of authority, and color of office. But it must be done with knowledge. How can you defend your rights if you don't know what they are? So a little breakdown of habeas corpus, which we just covered, the stare decisis and res judicata. In this case, it's actually in the Constitution, Article 1, Section 10. You have the right to writ of habeas corpus as well. All right. So stare, to look fixedly at, plus decisis, something decided. So you have the Latin stare decisis. And a side note, the Constitution is something that was decided by the people, right? So it's actually a trust document. So res, like I said earlier, a thing plus judica, something already adjudicated. So a thing already decided, right? Case law. Res judicata is our relevant cases and issues already decided upon by congressionally sanctioned Article 3 judge granted the powers to adjudicate, as distinguished from administrative magistrates, being decisions, court cases, that help mold and form the common law. With the enforcement of what can commonly be called international law or the laws of nature, the United Nations Declaration on Human Rights clearly supports the aforementioned case law referenced in regarding to licensing. The Declaration also supports the following case law: stare decisis, res judicata, and common law, Constitution, Republican law principles. Res judicata: every man is independent of all laws except those prescribed by nature. He is not bound by any institution formed by his fellow men without his consent. So any institution formed by man, you gotta give your consent for them to have subject matter over you or territorial over you. So reiteration, dealing with the United Nations Declaration on Human Rights, Article 20, everyone has the right to freedom of peaceful assembly and association. Keep in mind, we're not talking about picketing on the side of the street. We got the right to peacefully assemble and pick and have signs. That's not what this is about. Peacefully assembly and association. When you look up the Articles of Association, and in this case, it's dealing with before the United States became the United States. We're dealing with people organized in government. 13 colonies became one body politic, the United States of America. They were no longer British subjects, French subjects, Pilgrims, Puritans, Quakers. They wanted to organize themselves and call their body politic their, right? The European Union that was formed, called the United States of America, was an association. So the reason I'm highlighting that, because a lot of people look at that and think it's standing on the street, picketing. We have the right to peacefully assemble and march. No, it's to use your intellect, work with your people. That means you got a treasurer. That means you got a head. That means secretary. That means organization. And it's ambassadors involved that are motivated to get the word out, to expand what's already going on. No one may be compelled to belong to an association. So on the flip side, oh, you need a license to travel. That means you're forcing me to assimilate with the state of California when I'm already part of a nation state, distinguished from a corporate state. If I'm part of a nation state, I don't need to be part of a corporate state, because it takes a human, like I said last week, to form a corporation in the first place. So the nation state always trumped the corporate state, right? Because it's nationalities of people that form corporations. Considering the Constitution is the supreme law of this land in North America, see Article 6 of the Organic American Constitution, which include all contracts made under the authority of the United States. Considering the United States as a party to the United Nations, the aforementioned contract, agreement, Declaration on Human Rights is part of the Constitution, being the supreme law. No one can be forced to contract with any corporate entities. Therefore, no natural person is required by any law to have a medicinal license and cannot be charged with not having one or any type of license. This principle applies to registration, license plates, driver's license, tags, and the like. The remedy to unlawful arrests is the writ of habeas corpus. And of course, the level of our organization and sincerity, or like we said earlier, people can take notice of that. A lot of these laws, like I say, ain't nobody gonna be going to jail. Like it ain't like people get left alone that have love for one another and work with each other and have traditions, habits, and customs.
If you don't mind, I'm gonna
Yeah, go ahead, brother.
read that the Inter-American Declaration on the rights of the indigenous people, like the main conclusion. It said, we have the right to belong to the indigenous peoples. Indigenous individuals and communities have the right to belong to one or more indigenous peoples in accordance with the identity, traditions, customs, and system of belonging of each people. No discrimination of any kind may arise from the exercise of such right.
Yep. Yep. That go hand in hand with the association we was talking about. Yeah. And these things pop out to you, man, once you repetition, you just see what really what this is about. So once again, Article 1, Section 10, Clause 2, and that's what I was talking about earlier. That verbatim, the privilege of writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless when in case of rebellion or invasion, the public safety might require it. So, writ of habeas corpus or writ of habeas is your right. And people typically utilize that for nation states, part of nation states. Ambassadors utilize this writ. The name given, so habeas corpus, Latin, you have the body, the name given to a variety of writs. And this is the actual law definition, of which these were anciently the emphatic words, having for their object to bring a party before a court or judge. In common usage, and whenever these words are used alone, they are understood to mean the habeas corpus ad subjectum. Case law to support that. The sole function of the writ is to release from unlawful imprisonment. The office of the writ is not to determine prisoner's guilt or innocence, and only issue which it presents is whether prisoner is restrained of his liberty by due process. So that's the bottom line, because in order for someone to be, sentenced, it needs to be due process, which is the Fourth and Fifth Amendment collectively, meaning that you were indicted. For one, it was an injured party. The injured party came, sworn affidavit, said you did X, Y, Z. There was enough evidence where a grand jury indicted you. Then you get served. Then the hearing. Most of the times, there's no indictment. You just, show up here, or So that's due process. So here are a couple United Nations Declaration on Human Rights articles. Article 7, all are equal before the law and entitled without any discrimination. So equal protection of the law. I'm actually not going to read all of these, but 7 through 12. Whoever's not familiar with that, take a screenshot, etc. And keep that in mind that that's a contract as well. So here are a couple of the Bill of Rights, also known as the amendments. And keep in mind, when you look up Bill of Rights, it's going to say the 10 Bill of Rights. So I want to reiterate that. So what that means is Amendment 1 through 10 is lawful. The Fourth Amendment, like I said earlier, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, paper, and effect against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing a place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. The Fifth Amendment, no person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless presentment of an indictment of a grand jury. nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. The Sixth Amendment, in all criminal prosecutions, the accused, and this is the whole injured party element. That case law, Shearer versus Cullen, where it was ruled upon that for a crime to be committed, there must be an injured party, is rooted in the Sixth Amendment principle. In all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to speedy and public trial. Most importantly, to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation, to be confronted with the witness against him, to have compulsory process for obtaining witness in his favor, and to have assistance of counsel for his defense. So not only is it the injured party, but you have a right to counsel, which is not a bar member. Moorish organizational structure. Ambassadors of the nation state will be counsel for their own citizens or members. The Fifth Amendment, or the Fifth Bill of Rights, or I just read that. I'm sorry, I'm on the Seventh Amendment. We're on the Seventh Amendment, Seventh Bill of Rights. In suits at common law, where the value in controversy shall exceed $20, the right to trial by jury shall be preserved. So typically, people get tickets, they over $20. Typically, it's no trial. They'll call a trial just one officer sitting there. So the reason I'm saying it like that, so you can just different ways to spot frauds, or different ways to spot something being de jure versus feudal. So when we're dealing with gun charges, it is a fact that we have the right to bear arms supported by the Second Amendment. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, of course, I think most of us know what a state is, so this is a repetition in this sense. But notice that that's the language in the Second Amendment. That's the qualifier. Once again, it's a community, it's a state, it's an organization of people, businesses, schools, things in trust. The youngsters are getting laced on how to run business, so it keeps going. You have the right to protect that. Of course, when we're dealing with arms distinguished from a weapon, we're talking about exactness, right? So arms in law will be anything that a man wears for his defense, or takes in his hands, or uses in his anger to cast at or strike at another. Arms or coat of arms signifies insignia and signs of honor, such as were formerly assumed by soldiers of fortune and painted on their shields to distinguish them, are nearly the same as memorial bearings. So arms, you on defense. Also, it's an insignia of honor. Why is it an insignia of honor to have arms? Because you're secure in a free state. Why is that honorable? Because you're protecting the women and children. Businesses. You're not just running around here solo with ill intentions. Weapon, an instrument of offense or defensive combat, or anything used or designed to be used in destroying, defeating, or injuring an enemy, something to fight with. The term is chiefly used in law and the statutes prohibiting the carrying of concealed or deadly weapons. See the connotative, see the colorable jurisdiction? We're using lingo. We want to, we got the right to bear arms because now it's a whole different light on there. So I'm just explaining it that way for comprehension purposes. It becomes clear to anyone that the word weapon is associated with something deadly and concealed, hidden for destructive purposes, such as combat and to cause injury. Arms, on the other hand, is something honorable and used for one's own defense, and again, is your constitutionally secure right. You cannot be punished for it. The reason they issue licenses to carry is for people operating in a corporate capacity, meaning someone who is employed and their job requires them to have one. They have to go through the proper weapon safety training and mental stability clearing to either open or conceal carry, right? So different contexts. Licenses are for the conduct of business, profession, occupation. The exercise of such, when they are a privilege, licensing is, I just read that actually. So I think we get the point in this space. I don't think we need any more case laws. I think everybody's familiar with Article 6, Clause 2, dealing with treaties of the supreme law of the land. I think we need to go over that. All right, so yeah, for that, any questions before I transition to the next piece? All right. I'm gonna go into a chapter of the Quran. This is chapter 7. The friendship of Yahshua and Lamas. Yahshua explains to Lamas the meaning of truth. Among the priests of Jagannath, oh, just to be clear, this is Circle 7, Quran Divinely Prepared by Noble Jew Ali. Among the priests of Jagannath was one who loved the Jewish boy, referring to Yahshua. Lamas Brahmas was the name by which the priest was known. Right, so we have a grown man priest that was astonished by Yahshua, or the Jewish boy, the enlightened boy. One day, as Yahshua and Lamas walked alone in the Plaza Jagannath, Lama said, "My Jewish master, what is truth?" And Yahshua said, "Truth is the only thing that changes not. In all the world, there are two things. The one is truth, the other is falsehood. In falsehood, that which seems to be. Now truth is aught and has no cause, and yet it is the cause of everything. Falsehood is naught, and yet it is the manifest of right. Whatever has been made will be unmade. That which begins must end. All things can be seen by human eyes, are manifest of aught, are naught, and must pass away. The things we see are but reflexes just appearing, while the ethers vibrate so and so. And when conditions change, they disappear. The holy breath is truth, is that which was and is and evermore shall be. It cannot change nor pass away. Lama said, you answer very well. Now, what is man? And Yahshua said, man is the truth and falsehood strangely mixed. Man is the breath made flesh. So keep in mind that when we're saying the breath made flesh, well, this is just picking up from last week. When we're referring to the breath, or whatever we're referring to, anybody who knows this before I get to it, you can just shout it out. When we're dealing with the holy breath, what is that referring to? What is the holy breath? No one knows what the holy breath or what the holy breath is. Anybody want to take a guess?
You talking about the word of the Most High?
Mm-hmm. And then what would that be? What would that be called? Tazamada, you got something? Holy breath?
The spirit? Are you talking about the spirit or?
I try to give y'all shit. No, okay, so I'm gonna give it to y'all.
I'm like half in. I'm out here. I'm like trying to do two things at once. I thought I heard something.
So, what other name do we give to truth? The holy breath. So, when we go to the Quran and we know that truth is the holy breath, and once again, line 10, he said it, the holy breath is truth. Yahshua is answering these test questions, right? So once again, I rewind. The holy breath is truth, is that which was and is evermore shall be. It cannot change nor pass away. Lama said, you answer well. Now, what is man? And Jesus said, man is truth and falsehood strangely mixed. Man is the breath made flesh. So when he says man is the breath, he's saying he is the truth made flesh. And once we are made into this flesh, now we have tendencies of falsehood that wrestles with the truth. So every day you're wrestling with truth and man every day has to wrestle with truth and falsehood. And ideally, you would want the most divine frequency, which is the truth, to prevail in that wrestle. Oh, somebody said it? Okay, he said it. I didn't check the chat. Okay, he just said it right now. But yeah, true. He just said it right now. All right. So truth and falsehood are conjoined in him, and they strive, and naught goes down, and man, as truth abides. Again, Lamas ask, What do you say of power? So this sage, this mystic is testing the young man, Yahshua. What do you say of power? Or not really testing. He trying to get enlightened. I'll take that back. It's not even a test. This grown man is trying to get enlightenment from this young rabbi. And Yahshua said, it is a manifest. It is the result of force. It is but not. It is illusion, nothing more. Force changes not, but power changes as the ethers change. Force is the will of Allah in the omnipotent, and power is that will in manifest. The will, drive to do what? Manifest, directed by the breath, directed by truth. Manifesting, directed by truth. There is power in the winds, a power in the waves, a power in the lightning stroke, a power in the human arm, a power in the eye. The ethers cause these powers to be. And thought of Elohim, of angel, man, or other thinking things directs the force. So your thought directs your force. Because why would the human arm be powerful unless your thoughts direct it to be powerful, right? To strike, right? When it has done its work, the power is no more. It's back to just at rest, right? Again, Lamas asks of understanding, what have you to say? And Yahshua said, it is the rock on which man builds himself. So that's foundation, right? It is the gnosis. Whoever doesn't know what gnosis or Gnostic means, it's to know. To know versus believe will be the other side of the spectrum. It is the gnosis of the ought and of the naughts, of falsehood and truth. It is the knowledge of the lower self, the sensing of the powers of man himself. Again, Lamas ask, of wisdom, what have you to say? And Yahshua said, it is the consciousness that man is ought, that Allah and man are one. Microcosm, macrocosm, right? That naught is not, that power is but illusion, that heaven and earth and hell are not above or around or below, but in. You can be having this physical experience and be in hell or heaven, right? Based on decisions you have made, or will make. Which in the light of Ak becomes not, and Allah is all. Lamas asked, pray, what is faith? And Yahshua said, faith is the surety of the optimism of Allah and man, the certainty that man will reach the deific life. Nobility, divine. There's some divinity to your life that all of us can reach, especially with working together. That's the whole point. Because deific and divine is one and the same. And to invoke divine law, as they say in the Bible, honor your mother and fathers, that's just getting back to the culture of how we conducted ourselves so we can reach a deific life as a collective. Salvation is a ladder reaching from the heart of man to the heart of Allah. It has 3 steps. Belief is first, and this is what man thinks, perhaps is truth. The next is faith, and this is what man knows is truth. Fruition is the last, and this is man himself, the truth. So fruition, fruit, manifestation. you have motivating factors. We learn our history, illustrious culture that motivates us, makes us want to believe, and then have faith in what we're doing. Then we just work together, organize, create, and manifest the fruits. Once fruit starts coming from those actions, there's more incentive, right, to keep it going. Belief is lost in faith, and fruition is lost, right? No motivation to manifest, no motivation to build, make things happen. And man is saved when he has reached deific life, and he and Allah are one. So we see the principles all in chapter 7 that apply to our life. We want to keep these things in the forefront of our mind. So I wanted to transition to the metaphysical Bible dictionary dealing with ancient Egypt. Now that we've read that chapter, and I do want to also reiterate the metaphysical Bible dictionary of Israel. I touched on that last week, but once we read both back to back with ancient Egypt and Israel, we're going to start seeing a common tune. So Egypt, metaphysical Bible dictionary. So Egypt represents, and the reason I'm reading this on another tip is, like they called our people the Egyptians. They called our people the Israelites. Right? Even though we know that these were, misnomers. We know Egypt used to be called Hikupta. It goes to Hikupata, and dealing with Ptah, you're dealing with, right, manifesting. So we were essentially the manifestors. That life come through the primordial waters. That action that causes that, the catalyst. We're back to essentially you call us the manifestors. So, but we know nationality why we were called Moors. So metaphysically, Egypt represents the depths of the body consciousness, subjective mind. We have looked upon Egypt as a darkened, ignorant, and a very material phase of our being. Physically, Egypt refers to the obscured vitality of the organism. It represents, 2, a combination of substance and life in the body consciousness. Substance and life are essential to the rounding out of the man's perfection. A union of life and substance with imagination, and that's what Joseph represents in the Bible. The spiritual I am, with Jacob, and true thoughts of Joseph, Joseph's brothers, takes away much of the seeming obscurity of the hidden realm, or Egypt, the hidden realm, and is very essential to the well-being of even our spiritual faculties. Without substance and life, the higher faculties come to want. Right? That's where the whole famine in the land. It's a famine now. If you're not dealing in your higher faculties, everything's carnal. It's a famine in the land, so to speak. And so, at the heart of this Egypt, so seemingly darkened and obscure phase of our organism, we find an abiding place of good, dealing with Memphis, the abode of good, or metaphysically, right? In reality, this place of substance and life is good. Man cannot get along without it. It leads to great blessings, which understood and rightfully apportioned and used, dealing with the gates of the blessed ones. So we know in the Bible, when Jesus was a babe, his parents took him down into Egypt to preserve his life from the destructive Herod. So now we know metaphysically what's going on here is it's back to, like we read in the Holy Quran, getting back to that divinity, that deific man. It's always going to be a struggle. It never ends. There's always going to be some struggle with your flesh in some form or capacity. So now that we read that definition of Egypt. Let's read Israel again, like we read last week, and just do a comparative analysis. So Israel as a nation in its highest significance symbolizes spiritual consciousness. The thoughts that have been wrought in truth and righteousness makes the spiritual mind or spiritual consciousness. So once again, they call on our people, the Israelites, the conscious ones, the conscious ones. Or Islam, brother. So the conscious ones were able to manifest, right? The Kupa, they call us Egyptians, which really made Kupata, right? Kupata dealing with the generators, generating factor that causes life to come through the waters, or making your thoughts come to reality, to something you can touch. These are all acts of manifesting. So this is what we was anciently about. So notice when we were dealing with the 12-step ladder, and in the other definition, we said the gates. We were dealing with the gates of the gate of the blessed ones, right? So anytime we're referring to a gate, just know we're talking about, and we're dealing with 12 gates. We're dealing with the 12 chambers of the brain. And how it functions. And this is just back to the macro, micro situation, knowing thyself, going back to knowing thyself. You know, you can relate this to the chart, you know, getting your birth chart done. So it's just another way of looking at holy books, expressions. You know, we're dealing metaphysically, we're dealing with politically, civically, etc. That was actually my demonstration for today. I wanted to open the floor for any miscellaneous, or just chop it up at this point. Let me stop the recording.